All right, I'll give you another preview of a direction you might want to take. If you just make some sort of drawing, if you love to draw, that's great. If you don't love to draw, but you still want to try it, you can draw something extremely simple. With mine, I had no idea what I was going to make. I drew a stick figure running, which is not the most creative thing in the world, and anyone can do it. And then I just added shapes to it, and it turned into this messy drawing of an alien running in some sort of city with some UFOs in it. So once I drew that, and it was not a perfected drawing. If you want to draw something very detailed and beautiful first, you can, but you don't have to. I drew a very quick, messy drawing on purpose to show you that you can do it all in Photoshop. It's just a way to start with something. You might even have someone in your family who likes to draw and you're going to paint it in. That's another option. If you have a friend or a family member who's drawn something, you can use the drawing and then make a painting based on the drawing. But I did the little alien picture. I took a picture of it with my camera, emailed it to my school email, and opened it in Photoshop and copied it and pasted it into Photoshop. And this is what it looked like. And I have a little bit of extra space on the sides. That's fine. And I'll walk you through this. When I made the file, I went to the default Photoshop size and just clicked on that and hit create. So I brought it in, and I'm just going to use this as a background and then paint my picture using this to kind of guide me along. And if I want to change things as I go, that's fine too. So what I did first was I wanted to make this white more like the white of the paper. So I made down here and adjustment layer, and I use levels because it's simple. And here it is, and I'll turn that on. And I made it so you can still see some of the gray, but it's a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to use. Then I clicked on the layer, and I named it Sketch, and I changed the mode to Multiply. That means if it's up on the top, even though there's layers underneath it, we're going to see through, and these black lines are going to stay there. A little bit of gray will still be visible, but we're going to be painting while we're underneath it. So way down here on another layer, I named a layer Rough. And that's just where I pick colors, and I colored almost like a coloring book messy, just to try to figure out what colors I wanted to use. And it came out like that. So you can see, let's zoom in, how I was using a round brush, not getting too close to details, just trying to see if I like the colors. And I like this soft, cooler gray blue, soft pink, and a soft green. None of the colors are too intense, except the black, and then the green, and then a little shadow underneath. I put in one of the little cartoony smoke puffs of running, and I forgot to do that one. So this is very rough. I left the UFOs white, and this was just for me to get an idea of what colors I want to use. If I didn't like it, I could just color another color right over it or erase it. Now notice how, even though this layer is below the sketch, since the sketch is on Multiply, we can see the rough below it. Normally you can't see a layer that's under another layer. If sketch was on normal, it would still look like this, and you'd only see the edges, even if we were working on the rough. So that's a cool thing about sketch. Put on Multiply. Now we can work down here while this drawing's on top, and we won't hurt the original drawing. Next, I made another layer. You might not need every single one of these layers, but I wanted to show you the steps. Then I went and by the way, when I painted, I just picked the brush. You can get the exact color you want while you're in a brush. Turn my opacity up to 100. Hold down the Alt button, the Alt. And then if you click on the color you want, then you can just start coloring. And it's like a coloring book. I can get rid of that right there. And that's how you can do that. Because if you hold down Alt and click a color you want, and then let go of the Alt button, it goes right back to your brush. So you don't have to mess around with your toolbar. Right, once I did that, I went in and was a little more careful now that I knew my colors, and I made another layer to fix up. So just on this layer, now you can see I added a little more careful. I smudged some of these on purpose. And I went in and I did two things, or three things. I went in and was more careful around the edges. Here's the before and after. I also added gradients. I'm going to turn the sketch off for a minute. You see how this blue transitions into another blue. And the way I did that was I would select an area. Let's say I'll select this one. And then my foreground and background colors, I click on them and choose a color. Okay. And then I'll click on the background color and choose another color. Maybe I'll choose the same color, but then I'll pull it way over here. Okay. And now when I go to the gradient tool, which is right here, you just drag. Oops, I have this set up wrong. There we go. Just drag, and that fills your shape. So you're kind of drawing with selections too. I don't want that there, so I'm going to get rid of it. There we go. But yeah, with this, I do a lot of drawing by using the lasso tool and then painting in or filling in an area with color. There's some artists, that is a way some Photoshop artists like to work. All right, so that's what I did. I did gradients. I tightened up the edges a little bit. And the third thing I did was I did some real basic shading. Here's a simple trick for that. Go to a new file just for a minute. Anything we have, I'll draw a very simple, let's see, no, I'll draw a ball. And I'll fill the whole ball with blue. Not like that. There we go. Now, if I wanted to shade this ball, let's see, let's make its own layer. It's easier to grab. If I wanted to shade this ball, I could do it a number of ways. I could select the layer, hold down Control, click on the thumbnail for the layer, but then click on a blank layer, and now it's already masked off. I can pick a brush and hold down the Alt button, and I'll select the color. Now if I click on the foreground color, this is exactly the color we want. But let's say I wanted to make a shadow. A way to make an easy, quick shadow color, very simple, is to pick a color that's below what you've already picked and a little duller. So go down and to the left a little bit. The more further down you get, the more dramatic it will be. You could go all the way down to black if you wanted to. Let's say I go down here like that. And now I could paint, and I have a pretty good shadow color. You can actually do something better than that. When I pick that color, I can also slide the overall hue up a little bit towards a cooler blue. Shadows will be a little bit cooler. So that actually is a better shadow because I made the color a little more cool. What I mean by that is if I dragged it towards that bluish blue. If I dragged it more towards red, even a little bit, it's going to warm up your color. But I dragged it towards a more cooler color. So there's an easy shadow. Now, if that's more like cell shading, it's so intense, you could always turn the opacity of the layer down to make it very subtle, or anywhere in between. That's the great thing about breaking your image into layers. That makes it so convenient. Now I can do the same thing. Control click my original shape, make a new layer, And maybe now I will Control or Alt click the original color. I'll click on it again. In order to pick a highlight color, you're going to do the opposite of what you did. You're going to go above the color, but you are still going to go to the left. So you're going to go up and to the left a little bit. And again, the further you go, the more dramatic the change will be. I will also slide this hue bar slightly down towards the warmer colors. Maybe this will be my highlighted side. And this, again, is a very simplistic approach to shading. And I can change the opacity to however I want. And there you go. You can also make a layer, drag it below the original one. I'll use my lasso tool, and since it looks like the light is coming from this direction down, it's going to come out a little bit like that. And I could even, fill something with black, even though that might be too much depending on your picture. You can change the opacity to make your picture however you want, like that. And you can do everything in between. We'll get into more detail about getting a little more realistic or a little more specific, a little more involved, a little more finesse in the upcoming parts of the video. Let's get rid of that. Come back to here. So that's what I did on the revise. But that's all I did. For the green, I picked the green, and then I moved it a little bit more towards the warms, which made it more yellow, and I made it brighter. And I painted in some highlights on the top, left, and above some areas. I did the opposite down to the left for the shadows. I did the same thing for the pinks. And again, for the greens, I did it for the cloud puffs under the feet. That's it. The next thing I did was I started to revise even more, and I started blending some of those color choices together a little better. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's another great trick. I'll show you what mine looks like. I also added a little bit more detail. So now you can see there's a little more shading up here. Colors in the face have more variation. The blending from dark to light is a little more gradated. So again, that's without it, that's with it. Before, after. I was going very, very fast. If you took your time, it could be pretty amazing. Here's the same picture. Is it this one? Nope. Weird test. Everything's named really badly. All right, here's where I started the same thing in another picture. I just didn't get far enough. But I started coloring the body, and I was using that light, medium, dark trick. And I got as far as the belt and the body. It was going to be a little shinier, but that's as far as I got. You can kind of see how that was going to fit in. The leg would come off, but it's a little more careful. So you can take your time as much as you want. All right, how to do that blending. You can see this foot hasn't been blended. So I'm going to go to my brush. I'm going to make it small enough to work easily in the area. And yes, there's smudge tools and mixing tools, but one of the best ways you can do it is go up to your opacity and turn it down to about 50. You can also turn your flow down to about 50. And now I'm going to pick my shade color, hold down the ALT button, and click on it. And now that's my new color. Now, if I paint here, it's not going to paint exactly that color like it should, because it's only going to do it at half strength and at half flow. So that would make a good base color. So if I click once here, you see it's not as strong, but it's darker than this one. So it's a good blending color. Now I'm going to sample that color, and I'm going to paint over the border between the dark and the light, and it starts to soften it with some in-between shades of green. Try that again. So again, I sampled this at half and half, and I just paint along the edge, and you get this in-between color. Now, since the flow is turned down, I can paint over it again, and you're going to get, it's going to blend it even more. Now I can do it to the new color, sample it, and paint over that edge. And the more you do it, it starts to blend between, and you can blend it until there's really a smooth transition there. I can do the same thing starting with the bright, color around the edge. Then you select the new color you just made, the in-between color, and that's the new in-between color. Sample the in-between color, do it again, and it blends it very smoothly. It's a great trick. Let's try it over. Let's try it with the cloud. I'll select, let's say, the middle color and paint along the edge of the highlight. Select that new color we just made and do it again. And pretty soon your edges are going to start to disappear. I'll select the shadow, paint along the edge, softens it up. I'll select the new in-between color and do it again. Maybe I'll select the new in-between color and do it again this way. There we go. And you can do it till it's as smoothly blended as you want. There we go. There we go. So I just did a little bit there. Now that's much more blended than it was before. And that's what we did with that. All right, so moving on. Then I almost forgot to add the UFOs. So I added in some simple UFOs that were dark, like the sky, so they weren't a distracting standout part of the image. I got an idea to add a pit down here. So I just used the select tool and filled it with black and painted and drew. Added windows. And then I thought this needed a little more hard shading because I did like the lines from the drawing. Those could stay. If you like that kind of look, we could leave those in. Or you could just paint it enough and render it enough that you don't need them anymore. So I just add a little more shading. And then I remembered I wanted like a beam coming down, almost like a spotlight. So added that in. And I think that was it. Oh, no. And then we added textures, and I'll show you guys how to add textures in. I added a texture to the building and a texture to the ground. And I used layer masks for that, which we learned about in previous assignments. You could go back and review how to do layer masks